Welcome to my 2021 F1 season predictions. This has been a pretty popular topic over the F1 YouTube community, so I've decided to do one myself. First, let's get started with the driver standings. Starting off in P20, I put Nikita Mazepin. Now, I don't think Mazepin will really do anything too special. I think he'll be the only driver to not score points. And so the end, I've put him in P20. In P19, I've put Nicholas Latifi. Now, I don't think Latifi had a bad 2020 season, but I don't think that Williams' car will allow him to get any higher than P19 or P18 at most. And so I've put him in P19 in the end, behind the rest of the back markers. Moving on in P18, I've put Mick Schumacher. Now, I think Schumacher will show glimpses of his talent, but as like any other series, I think he'll take some time to get to grips with F1. And I think that Haas car will be the worst in the field this year, so I don't really see him finishing any higher than P18 in the end. In P17, I've put Kimi Räikkönen. Now, I think Kimi will have a decent 2021 season. However, I don't really see him finishing any higher than P17 as he's at the latter end of his career, and I feel like he'll struggle a bit compared to the other two who I've put ahead of him. And in the end, I put him in P17. In P16, I've put George Russell. Now, as we saw in his Mercedes stand-in, he can be a future world champion. And I do see him scoring his first points with Williams this season. And I see him finishing P16 in the end. I don't see him finishing any higher, as I don't think that Williams' car will allow him to go any higher than P16. In P15, and top of the backmarker group, I put Antonio Giovinazzi. Now, I think Gio will have his best season to date, and he'll outperform all of the back markers except for maybe Russell. And with the Alfa Romeo possibly being the best car of that back trio, I think he'll get best of the rest in that back marker group. Moving away from the back marker group, I've put Yuki Tsunoda in P14. Now, I think Yuki will have a good 2021 season. However, with the level of competition in this year's midfield, I don't see him and his car allowing him to finish any higher than P14 in the end. In 13th place, I've put Esteban Ocon. Now, I think he had the okay end to his 2020 campaign. However, I don't really see that carrying on in 2021. The transition from Renault to Alpine has been a bit sketchy. It wasn't as smooth as Racing Point Aston Martin, for example. And so I don't see him and his car allowing him to go any higher than P13. In P12, I put Pierre Gasly. Now, I see Gasly having a similar 2021 as he did to 2020. However, I don't think he'll have that win to carry him up the standings. And because of this, I've put him in P12. I think he'll still outperform his car, but I don't see him being carried up the standings by that win, as I already said. In P11, I've put Carlos Sainz. Now, I think Sainz will take a bit of time to get into grips with that Ferrari, but when he does, I think he'll score consistent points. I think the Ferrari will improve this year, and I think Sainz will put a bit of a challenge up to Leclerc, who have put farther up the standings. In P10, I've put Lance Stroll. Now, I see Stroll as like I did Gasly, having a similar 2021 as he did in 2020. I think the consistency will still be a bit lacking, but the raw results will be there, and I think those raw results will be enough to carry him up till P10 in the standings. In P9, I've put Fernando Alonso. Now, with Alonso returning this year, some people are hyping him up and putting him really far up the standings, and some people are downplaying him a bit. I found a bit of a middle ground in P9. I don't think that Renault or Alpine car will be the greatest next season, and I do see Alonso outperforming it as he did with the McLarens back in the 2015 to 2018 era. In 8th place, I've put Lando Norris. Now, I think Norris will have a better 2021 than he did 2020. And I think, although that McLaren car is switching from Renault to Mercedes, I do trust that their car has improved from 2020 to 2021. And I think Norris will finish in P8 in the end. In 7th place, I put Charles Leclerc. Now, I think Leclerc will have a much better 2021 than he did 2020. I think if he can mitigate those mistakes that he made in 2020, he'll be able to elevate himself up to P7 in the standings, and that's where I put him in the end. P6, I've put Sebastian Vettel. Now, I think Vettel will be rejuvenated a bit by Aston Martin, and I think he'll get back some of his early Ferrari days form. And with that form, I think that'll elevate him up till P6 in the standings, along with the Aston Martin being a pretty good car in the end. In P5 and best of the rest, I've put Daniel Ricciardo. Now I think Ricciardo will have a really good season with McLaren, and I do believe that McLaren will be the one of the top contenders in the midfield, and I think Ricciardo and McLaren will push themselves up till P5 in the standings. In P4 for Sergio Perez. Now I think Perez will break the curse of that second Red Bull seat, and I think he will take the challenge up to his teammate and the two Mercedes. And however, I don't really see him finishing ahead of either three of them, and I think he'll finish P4 in the end. In P3, I put Valtteri Bottas. Although Bottas had a decent 2020 season, he only managed to finish 9 points ahead of Verstappen in the end. Because of this, I think that Verstappen will manage to get one up on him this season, and I think that he'll beat him to P2. In runner-up position, I put Max Verstappen. Now, I think that Red Bull will improve this season, and I think Verstappen will manage to slot into P2. If you actually ran the 2020 season in reverse, Verstappen would stay into P2 up until the final race of the season, where he'd be overtaken by Bottas. Because of this, I've decided that he would go in P2, and I think that he will take the fight to the Mercedes pretty often next season. In P1 and the world champion for 2021, I've put Lewis Hamilton. I see him taking his 8th world title this season, and I also see him taking his 100th Grand Prix victory. I see the Mercedes pretty easily being the fastest car on the grid, and I'd see Lewis getting the world championship and breaking the record. Here on screen is a final driver standings, so from P1 to P20. You can pause the video and view it if you would like to. So after we've done the drivers, let's move on to the constructor standings. These constructor standings will be based on the drivers, so they won't mathematically not make sense. In last place, I've put Haas. Now, Haas have had a bit of a downward spiral since 2018, and I don't see that improving as they're signing 2 new rookies, and that Ferrari engine is not the greatest. I think all of these factors combined will lead them only finishing last place in the standings. In P9, I've put Williams. Williams have finished last for the past 3 seasons, and I see them jumping up 1 place because of the same reasons as I stated for Haas with their downfall. I see them scoring a couple of points this season, unlike last season, and I see them finishing P9 in the end. In 8th place, I put Alfa Romeo. Now, I think Alfa Romeo will have a similar 2021 as they did to 2020, and with Giovinazzi and Raikkonen finishing in the higher end of the back group, I see them finishing 8th place in the end. In P7, I've put AlphaTauri. Now, I think AlphaTauri will have a similar 2021 as they did to 2020, as they're essentially just carrying over the same car. I think Ferrari will make steps up the field, and AlphaTauri will stick in P7. I think they'll still be on the back of the midfield, but I don't think they'll really challenge them for championship positions. In 6th place, I've put Alpine. Now, although Renault have made steps in the right direction with their car, I feel like the transition from Renault to Alpine has been a bit iffy. It wasn't as smooth as Racing Point to Aston Martin, and because of this, I see them finishing P6. Along with the factors of other teams improving, this is why they finished P6 in my books. Now in 5th place, I put Ferrari. They had a pretty bad 2020 to say the least, but I think that they will improve and start to work their way back up the field with a so-called improved engine and a pretty good driver lineup. I see them finishing 5th place in the end. In 4th place, I put Aston Martin. Now, I think Aston Martin will have the 3rd best car on the grid. However, I think they will have a similar fight to McLaren as they did in 2020. I feel like they're going to lose out because of the lack of consistency of the drivers, which was pretty apparent in 2020, and that McLaren was a very strong point, and I think that will carry on to 2021. In P3, I've put McLaren. Now, McLaren have had a very good 2020, and although their switch to Mercedes engines may hurt their performance, I think their consistency and their driver lineup will help them move up to P3 in the standings. I think they'll still have to fight for it against Aston Martin, but I think they'll end up P3 in the end. In runner-up, I've put Red Bull. Now, Red Bull, I think will take the fight to Mercedes a bit more with Perez and Verstappen at the wheel. However, I don't really see them challenging Mercedes for the title this year, and I see them finishing second place in the end. So in first place, I've put Mercedes. I see them taking their 8th consecutive Constructors title. I think their car will be the class of the field once again. With the rule regs, I don't see it being faster than the 2020 model. However, I do see it dominating over the field, and I see it winning its 8th Constructors World title. Here are my predictions for the Constructor standings. You can pause the video and look through them. Here are some other random predictions that I made. The first one is that there will be 10 more than 10 actually, different podium finishers. Considering that there were 13 different podium finishers last year, I don't see this being too crazy. I've also said there's going to be 5 different race winners, and to name them, the 2 Mercedes, the 2 Red Bulls, and one of the midfield drivers. I think 14 drivers will get a top 5 finish, which is all of the front runners in midfield. And I think there'll be 2 mid-season driver moves, like, for example, Hulkenberg replacing Perez last season, or the George Russell and Jack Aitken thing that happened in Sakir. I think there'll be 2 of those this year. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have your own predictions, you can put them in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear them. And I'll see you guys soon. Later.